Yo, this hot, this the spot, there it is, pod.com. We're interviewing the best comedians, so tune in quick and get your ears receiving them. We talking about life and life to stream right to you, from the microphone right to your home, dude. Side note, this might get embarrassing, but no, don't sweat, yo, cause there it is.
Welcome to the There It Is podcast, a comedy podcast to help you find your inspiration that's now 10 years old. I'm your host, Jason Farr. Let's do this. Thanks so much for joining us. I can't believe we're 10 years old now. Crazy. They grow up so fast. Thank you to everyone who came out to the show, the 10th anniversary show at Young Ethel's in Brooklyn. It was a great time. It's been a great time here ever since. I got some great career news. I had this 10th anniversary special. Brother of the show was in town. We went to a Yankees game. That was great. Super fun. And then the Knicks won in 5. It was awesome. Got to see a lot of history. Got to see so much joy in this city. And I am riding that wave. Such a good time to be here in New York. And just to be living this life. We've got a really great episode for you today. It is with comedy writer and author John Vorhaus. He returns and he gives us, just like he did before, a ton of great information. You're going to love it. Let's get right to it. Here's my chat with John Vorhaus. It's great to have you back.
Great to be back.
Yeah. Your episode is, in 10 years, this is, a lofty thing to say, but it's I think one of the strongest episodes we've done because it had so much information. It was so concise. And I think one people need to listen to if they haven't already.
Thank you. I appreciate that. You're too kind. No, wait, you're just the right amount of kind.
Look, I could say this. It's my podcast.
You can say anything you want. I've actually, on the subject of delivering information that matters, I've been thinking about why I have that knack, and I realized it's a lifetime of utter self-absorption. Like for as long as I can remember, I've been really, really, really interested in myself, and as a consequence, I'm always investigating. Now, how did I think of that? What was my process? And how can I put it in terms that other people understand? So I guess I've turned self-absorption into a cottage industry.
So I got the Comic Toolbox after we spoke because I was like, oh, I need this book. And which you also were kind enough to send, a special. I haven't been able to read comedy writing for life yet, but that is it's sitting over. I'm looking over at my ottoman that it's sitting on. It's right on top because it's one of the ones I want to get to next. But the Comic Toolbox, such great information in there, and I love how you structure it where you have a few chapters that are, here are some tools in the toolbox, but then you also have a lot of explainer stuff, defining concepts and principles. So I think it's a must read for anyone who's pursuing comedy. And I think, while a lot of it is focused on writing, I think it is a great book for anyone doing any kind of comedy, even improv, because the principles still align.
Well, thank you for saying that. I think it's true. The Comic Toolbox has been around now for more than, I'm doing rough math here, almost 35 years. Wow. And this tells us a couple of things. One is good news. It's kind of a classic. Mm-hmm. Bad news, it's going to outlive me. And it's really, really weird to think about that. The fact that it has lasted now 2 generations means it's going to last longer still. I humbly compare it to Strunk & White's book, The Elements of Style, which had been around since the early 1900s, teaching people how to write. And so it is clear to me, I am aware of the fact that that book will outlive me. And I'm happy to have that as a legacy. It does seem to have a knack for helping people make the transition from not writing to writing.
Yeah.
Somebody once described it as like slipping into a warm bath. And it's because I throw in all kinds of um, low pressure exercises and low stress exercises. You can, by doing the work in the book, it's not that hard. You kind of get the sense, hey, I actually am funny, even if I don't think I am, because look, here's evidence on the page.
Right.
So I think that's why it works.
Yeah, it works so well. And there's so much, I am a big proponent from learning from various places on how to do comedy. I mean, you can watch a jazz band play and learn something about how to do comedy. And I think learning how to, like you have a section on comic characters in the Comic Toolbox, and that I think is super informational for anyone pursuing comedy, even if they want to be a comedic actor, because it informs so much on, oh, this is what makes a character a comedic character. And it's not all just on, well, the person has funny mannerisms or something, like the actor has a funny delivery system. Like, yeah, that certainly helps, but it supports a comedic perspective. and that, getting people to realize that and recognize that and pursue that part of it is, I think, crucial.
Well, it's pretty simple.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to create a comic character, you simply start with, as I put it in the Comic Toolbox, a comic perspective, which is a single strong way of filtering reality. Examples can include greedy, ignorant, naive, alien, male, female, liberal, conservative. The difference between real people in the real world and comic people is real people in the real world have a lot of different points of view.
Mm-hmm.
We look at things through different filters. But a comic character, a strong comic character, is filtering everything through a single strong comic filter.
Yeah.
I'm just now reviewing the pilot episode of The Big Bang Theory because I'm teaching a Zoom class next week on comic characters, and that's homework for the class.
Yeah.
And you just see it right away. You have a childlike, innocent/arrogant comic perspective in Sheldon,
Mm-hmm.
and a humanist, emotionally based, empathetic character in Leonard. And so it's self-centered versus other-centered
Mm-hmm.
from the first moment to the last moment.
Right. And very, there's something else you were talking in the book about, was it the law of comic opposites, which that sort of relates to, in that it's like The Odd Couple, just in the nerd world, in a way.
Mm-hmm,
like it still
exactly.
plays off of that. And I'm flipping through the book right now and just like remembered that section that I have dog-eared.
Maybe you'd like to read. Maybe you'd like to read chapter 9 out loud.
Okay, let me get. What page does chapter 9 start on? And also, like, what? So that is Practical Jokes, page 116.
Yeah, read the text.
Of course, no book on comedy would be complete without a comprehensive discussion of practical jokes. Next page, chapter 10.
Chapter 10.
Comedy and yeah, very funny. That is the quickest chapter in the book.
Well, and there's a couple of things going on there. There's a comic tool at work called defeat of expectation.
Mm-hmm.
Because if the chapter is called Practical Jokes, your expectation is you're going to see a full and complete discussion of what practical jokes are and how to execute on them. When you get instead a joke about practical jokes, it defeats your expectation, and that's where the laugh lies.
Mm-hmm.
By extension, anytime you want to create a comic moment out of nothing at all you need to do is ask, what is the character's expectation? How can I defeat it? What is the audience's expectation? How can I defeat it? And what I like about this approach is you never have to be funny. You only have to solve a pretty easily solved problem. We, all of us creative types who drive ourselves crazy thinking we're insufficient in some sense, we're vexed by the idea that we must be quote unquote creative. And if we're not creative, if we don't have creativity working for us, we're somehow sad, pathetic losers. But what I do is a simple semantic change. Instead of thinking of myself as a creator, I think of myself as a creative problem solver because problem solving is a technical process. It's kind of a left brain process. It has a lot less emotional weight behind it.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of saying, where am I going to get an idea for a sitcom and why don't I have one and why am I such a sad, pathetic loser? I can say, here's a comic perspective, conservative. What's the opposite of that comic perspective? Liberal. Okay. How can I put a liberal and a conservative together in the same situation and make them fight? The funny will inevitably emerge from that fight because the foundation is strong. It's liberal versus conservative, and it's completely uncompromising.
Yeah.
And that just that sort of thinking gets me, and I think everybody, out of creative pitfalls.
Right.
And that's why it's there.
What you describe and the way you describe it reminds me of every comic writer, every writer in comedy that I have heard or read an interview of or just talked to on the podcast. It is such a good description of how I hear the Daily Show staff write stuff, or, you know, anyone who's writing that kind of stuff on a daily basis, because they are looking at it in that style. And it is sort of like problem solving of like, here's the joke. It doesn't work. What will make it work? And it's all about finding the right equation to solve the problem.
It often happens that if a joke doesn't work, it's because there's not quite the right amount of information in the setup.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes the joke doesn't work because there's not enough information, so the audience can't solve the puzzle of the joke.
Yeah.
Other times the joke doesn't work because there's too much information, and so there's no puzzle for the audience to solve. Then it's just a matter of tuning the material by adding or subtracting information. And again, if that's your approach, it takes you immediately outside the whole emotional burden of I have to be funny and I don't feel funny.
Mm-hmm.
You spend your day in creative problem solving, which is a really happy place to be.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk a little bit more about this idea of the setup either having too much or too little information, because you know, I just remember back in my open mic days, or just speaking to a person who's not a comic, who's trying too hard to make a joke. That's all in there, right? Like they either are making a joke and there's some backstory that the average person doesn't know or understand. So it's like, yeah, you got to set that part up. Or they're worried about people not understanding what's actually a very commonly understood thing. So they put way too much information in there. And sometimes it's hard to know which situation you're in when you're writing a joke. What sort of advice do you give when someone is trying to write a joke and there's like this thin line of like, wait, do I actually need to explain this?
Wow, there's so much going on here. Let me see if I can break it down, because I have a lot of advice. I think actually the issue that you're describing is one level deeper. Stand-up comics at a certain level of their development, early in their development, they think it's their job to justify themselves to the audience. And the way they justify themselves is by telling what they perceive to be the truth of their experience, the facts of their experience.
Right.
And this is where you'll have comics who are over-explaining a joke because they think part of their job is to make sure that the audience understands this is who they really are. I draw a distinction between what is truthful, what is factual, and what is authentic. You can have a situation that is a complete exaggeration of reality, but that is emotionally authentic, and so it works as comedy. On the other hand, you can have a situation that is factually correct. It's absolutely loyal to the way the events unfolded, but it's not funny because there's no emotional authenticity in it. All of this boils down to the following. When we take the stage, we have a choice of justifying ourselves to the audience or revealing ourselves to the audience. When we justify ourselves to the audience, that's where we get into trouble, because we're trying to say to the audience, I'm telling you this for the sake of earning your approval. This is my motivation. And that never works because the audience recognizes the performer's need and runs away from it.
Yeah.
When instead we say, I'm telling you this for the sake of revealing myself to you completely, that's when you win the audience's loyalty, because at the end of the day, the audience only wants to know one thing from you, and that is, what is it like to be you? So there's the technology of the joke, adding and subtracting words to make the information, make the puzzle of the joke solve in the right way, make it pop.
Mm-hmm.
But there's also the underlying emotional relationship between the person who's writing the joke / telling the joke and the audience that they're telling it to. So we see stand-up comics go through a common evolution where they almost hold their own material at arm's length because they're afraid to stand behind it and own it.
Mm-hmm.
And once they've had the experience of putting it up there and seeing the audience react to it in all the ways, good and bad, that the audience will react, at some point, they achieve a critical mass of self-understanding and they say, now I get it. My job isn't to be factually correct. My job is to be emotionally authentic.
Yeah, which is what makes it an art form. I've heard a songwriter talk about how a song is not supposed to be something that's universally true and understood or morally right.
Mm-hmm.
It's supposed to be a clear, honest description of what the emotion felt like.
I was listening to a song on 70s radio, a carpenter singing Top of the World. I'm on the top of the world looking down on creation. It's a love song.
Uh-huh.
And I held it in contempt because it was a pop song back in the day. But listening to it with fresh ears now and in these latter days, I realized some songwriter somewhere had an idea for a pop song, but what makes it work is it's exactly what you're describing. The lyrics are completely simple, almost to the point where they're cliche,
Mm-hmm.
but the emotion is universal. And so if the material works, it creates an emotional bridge between the creator of the emotion and the receiver of the emotion. And this will be true in songwriting and comedy for sure, art, probably everything else we can think of.
Yeah, and that's why I love learning from all the different places. You know, we are.
I want to know, what do you learn about comedy from listening to jazz? That's what I want to know.
The rhythm of being in time together, like being like, because like so much of comedy is being comic timing, and so I sort of feel when I'm listening or especially watching a live band play, and I say jazz because, you know, each of them are going to solo at some point. And so they're in a groove together, and you see when one gives focus, like, you know, like stops so another person can take focus. And that taught me so much of like, oh, that's like when I'm watching an improv group, they're both are improvising, the musicians and the improvisers, the comic improvisers. And you have to like have that give and take in improv as well. And you have to be on a sort of wavelength with each other in order for it to work. They have to be in time together to a certain extent. That's why you really have to be listening and just sort of riding the groove, so to speak, when you're doing improv. Otherwise, it's just going to be one person out there trying to get all the shots up.
Sure.
And they're, you know, I could watch a basketball game and it's the same way. It's like, is this a good shot for me to take? No, I should actually pass this off. Like that concept works in comedy as well when you're doing improv. It's like, should I try to be the one who shines here? Or should I set my scene partner up who hasn't had a chance to even get there? It hasn't had a chance to shine, but also hasn't even had a chance maybe to establish something. And so I should assist them. Like all of it, like I see like some overlap, and it makes me realize like, oh, the times when it works is when people are focused on everything that's happening at that time and giving others a chance, and when it's needed, taking the limelight, taking the focal point of the audience. Like sometimes you have to step up and be the one everyone's paying attention to, and sometimes you got to hang back and just support. And there's a way that looks.
I postulate that we're talking about a community, whether the community is stand-up comedy performers and audience, or jazz musicians, or basketball team. So the question the question that leads to grief and sorrow is, how can I impress this community?
Mm-hmm.
The question that leads to transcendence is, how can I be in service to this community?
Mm-hmm.
And again, I'm thinking particularly about young and self-conscious stand-up comics who think that their job is to shine and therefore come to grief because their own ego prevents them from excelling.
Yeah.
If they just take the attitude instead, how can I serve everybody's good time tonight? They're going to take so much pressure off themselves, and they're going to do so much better job, and they're going to win so much loyalty because they will be seen to be in service. This summer, I'm doing a couple of workshops in Europe.
Mm-hmm.
These are writers' room labs and simulations, where I'm presenting the students with a body of work about a fictional sitcom, and then putting them through the paces they would expect to encounter in a situation comedy writer's room, going off and writing jokes, breaking stories, whatnot. And this is going to be the prime directive here is, be in service of the work. Don't be in service of your ego. If you're in service of the ego, it's not going to work. If you're in service of the work, it's going to be great.
Yes.
And by the way, that notion is not commonly held in sitcom writing rooms.
No.
It's almost the opposite. It's one of the things that makes me glad I'm not in those rooms a lot of times, because they can be fiercely ego driven, which is to say driven by fear and insecurity, and consequently really unhappy places. But that's not the sort of room I choose to create.
Yeah, I've heard the same about SNL. There's some people who had a miserable time there because they were trying to get jokes on or get sketches on, and they weren't, and that was the worst. And then there were people who had a wonderful time there, and they too got sketches cut or didn't get stuff on, but they talk about how great their time was there and how much they learned. And it just seems like it's the difference of perspective, like one having a different attitude about how it should go versus how the other one thought it should go.
It's a gift to have that perspective at a young age, because you're staring down the barrel of your future, and it feels like everything is riding on what happens today. If I land this joke, if I get this joke on the show, I'm going to be a made guy. I'm going to win my future. And if I don't get this joke on, it's a disastrophe, and I'm going to die. Jason, I can tell you one thing about being older is I've left so much of that behind.
Yeah.
Because at this point, what are they going to do? Kill me? That's and so for practitioners early or mid-career, it's always just so useful to take the long view. I like to invoke the 20-year rule a lot of times. If it's not going to matter in 20 years, it doesn't matter now.
That is the best advice that I've been given on this show, I believe. And because I've used it so much, and it really does help just sort of get out of your own way before a show. If you're thinking like, oh, this has to be, you put so much pressure on something like this has to be the best ever. It's like, why, if it is the best ever, what do you think's going to happen?
What do you think's going to happen? You're going to be a made guy? You're never going to have to hustle for gigs anymore?
Right. Like, that's just not how it is. They're famous actors who still have to audition. It's just part of it. And so
And even if they don't have to audition, even if they've let go of the professional stuff, they still face the same struggle everyone faces, or challenge, let's say, of how do I feel comfortable being who I am?
Yeah.
And I think it's I don't have the experience of being a celebrity, so I can't say for sure, but it seems to me that if you're a successful celebrity, one pitfall you face is you get hooked on the validation of other people. And then if that validation is taken away, where do you go from there? So if you're going to be emotionally healthy, you have to figure out validation does not come from outside. It must come from within, or it's not authentic and it won't serve you.
Yeah.
I believe I saw a documentary with Chevy Chase not too long ago.
Yeah.
Who seemed to have come at the end of a longish road to this understanding that a lot of the conflicts he had in his early years had to do with his own insecurities. And once he left those insecurities behind, he had a lot less conflict with other people and a lot more happiness within.
Mm.
So we can say that your creative journey and your journey towards self-awareness exist side by side in parallel every step of the way. The deeper you get into your creativity, the more you understand yourself as a person.
Mm-hmm.
The deeper you get into your self-understanding, the more effectively you can operate creatively. And you end up creating a positive feedback loop that makes you feel more effective and therefore better about yourself, and then better about yourself and therefore more effective.
That is gonna probably be the next best bit of advice I've gotten on this
Yay.
podcast, because that is something I have struggled with, of like, well, I'm not one who's an egoist who's like looking for major fame or for, like I want to have success, but I've always told myself that I want to have like success to me is to be working in and on things that I admire and, the kind of things that inspired me. And that keeps me humble and keeps my ego in check. But at this stage where I am right now, I am a little bit like, well, that part's still true, but also what is the purpose of doing certain things if, some people are going to say like, well, it has to be so successful or whatever. What approach do I need to take on working on this project or working on that or trying to get ahead in my career without being egotistical? Like, I think this advice you're giving is the solve for that. That if I need to be thinking about all of this as an artist and as a person, and what is it about myself that I can learn so that I can continue to grow in the ways that I want to grow.
What you're talking about is redefining purpose.
Mm-hmm.
Purpose is not career advancement. Purpose
Right.
is the reason for doing the work.
Right.
And someone will say, well, yeah, the reason for doing the work is career advancement. No, the reason for doing the work is doing the work. If you do the work, there might be some career advancement. But if you're thinking about it with the goal of career advancement, you're not going to do the work as effectively as you might.
Mm-hmm.
Can I tell you a brief story that relates to this? Because it's the revelation that I'm going through right now. 100 years ago in the 1920s, a young woman traveled around the world on tramp steamers and sailing ships. She was determined to be a single woman in a world of adventure. 50 years later, she wrote her memoir. And in the nature of these things, she probably self-printed 50 copies and distributed them to family and friends. I'm a member of her family. This was my great aunt. And I held a copy of her memoir. As I described it, it sat on my bookshelf for 40 years, gathering guilt. But then one day, not too long ago, I looked at it with fresh eyes and I said, the tools have changed now. I can probably digitize this into OCR text and give this book a new life. And at this point, I thought to myself, it's like a message in a bottle floating on the sea of time.
Mm-hmm.
And it's washed up on my beach. And now here it sits in my hand. If I don't repackage it and send it back out on the sea of time, it dies with me. There is no future for this book unless I claim and become a custodian for that future. So the first time in my life, I find myself editing a book I didn't write and championing an author who's not me.
Right.
And so everything that I've ever talked about being in service of the work, it's kind of turned upside down in my mind, because I am in service of the legacy of a person who's been dead since 1989.
Yeah.
And it thrills me and it kind of scares me, because it's making me wonder if I should have been doing this all along instead of being so damn self-absorbed. But
you weren't being self-absorbed. You were offering something that helps people still.
I certainly own that. But this is kind of a different thing.
Sure.
And so going back to this question of purpose, what is the purpose of this for me? Mm-hmm. On one level, the purpose is to give this book a second life because it deserves one. But honestly, the real purpose is for me to do the work of serving this project, of executing this project to the best of my ability for the growth that's in it for me now, today, as a quote unquote retiree who is nevertheless determined to continue to advance my own self-understanding and my own transformation. I'm becoming a different purpose. I'm sorry, I'm becoming a different person. And in that sense, I think I'm serving the real purpose of the project.
That's a lovely thought. So how can we talk now about this book? I know you have a couple of books. You have that's all like another book that is a comedy writing book, the
Comedy Writer's Companion,
which has some sections from previous books and then a new section. And then you have this book that you were just discussing, Sins of Commission. Thank God.
Thank God. Yeah, the Comedy Writer's Companion is an omnibus edition plus. I had written 3 books, Comedy Writing for Life, The Little Book of Sitcom, The Little Book of Stand-Up. But when I went back and I looked at them last year, I said to myself, none of these books does exactly what I want it to do. They did what I wanted them to do 10, 15 years ago when I wrote them, but I'm different now. I can bring more to it.
Right.
And so I simultaneously expanded some sections and removed what I described as squeezing out the stupid. I took out a lot of self-indulgent to make them even more dense in terms of what they offer to the reader, hardcore information. And based on my best current understanding of myself as a writer and an editor and a packager and a publisher, put them together in this omnibus called the Comedy Writer's Companion, which has been described as, quote unquote, the last word on comedy from the guy who wrote the first word on comedy. So that exists, and it's available on my website, and it's available on Amazon, and it's good value because it's less expensive than all of those books put together, and it really is much more reflective of who I am now. And by the way, before the end of the year, it will also be available in Russian.
Oh, amazing.
I sold the Russian rights, and I just got the advance actually hit my bank account today. So I got some free money not from Russia, but from Cyprus, where the publishing company has its headquarters, because, the modern world.
Yeah.
But it tickles me to think that my work will be helping young people in Russia deal with a situation that I just can't even fathom.
Right.
I had it challenged me, because I went through this long period of time like, I don't want to sell my books to Russia. I don't want to do any more work there. I had worked there in the pre-Putin days, but now I felt like, well, they've sacrificed their moral authority and I have some moral high ground. And without mentioning names, I feel like events in this country have made me realize my country has no moral authority, no moral high ground anymore. So my mission is to help writers wherever I find them and try to stand outside the politics of it all.
Yeah.
So
that's great.
Regarding my great aunt's book, Sins of Commission, thank God. Here's what you need to know about this. And it's not a spoiler, but it's kind of what the story is all about. So this woman went to sea in the 1920s as a young independent woman. Before she left, the first thing she did was she went to the local sheriff's office and got a permit to buy a 25 caliber automatic pistol that she could carry with her for self-defense. And she had this gun through all her life, never really used it. But then at the other end of her life, when she was almost 90 years old and going blind, she ended her own life with that very gun. And the takeaway for me, and this is what I will convey when I write the screenplay version of this story, if you're the sort of person who makes a choice early in life to live according to your own rules, if you say authenticity matters more than anything else, freedom of thought, freedom of action, and you live your whole life according to that principle with integrity, which I describe as harmony of actions around values. And you arrive at the end of your life and you say, I decide not to be a burden to my family, and you end your own life. That's not a tragedy. That's a profound happy ending. That is a validation of the very authenticity and the very agency that you gave yourself from the start. Obviously, this isn't reflected in the memoir because she wrote the memoir before she killed herself. And, the ending is not spoken. But when I write the screen version of it, that's going to be the story. We're going to open on the suicide and then tell the story that, if you will, earns that ending. And if I get to that, if I get the audience to think, hey, if I were that person in that situation, I'd be quite okay with that decision. Again, thinking about purpose. I'll
Right.
really be serving my purpose because that's something I believe in. And my purpose is to communicate that belief to others. So stay tuned, everybody. Coming soon to a digital bookstore near you.
Yes. And you don't have a specific date for that yet?
It'll be out by Christmas.
Okay, by Christmas.
It'll be my Christmas book. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I can't wait to see that come out and hear more about it when it's fully ready. And then the movie rights when that period comes.
That's one of the reasons that I'm publishing the book, is that I have intellectual property that I control. So,
yeah,
for what that's worth. Although Hollywood pipe dream, guy my age thinking about reinventing himself as hey, I've got some IP. I could be a producer of this movie that I'm also writing. Is that realistic? I don't know. But again, if I take joy in the execution of the work and I grow from having done it, and I achieve something that I consider to have been worth doing, everything else takes care of itself. And
right.
And it's been that way all my life.
Yeah. And I wonder if that's like one of the hangups for people, like maybe even myself, where we lose sort of sight that the process is progress, and and a specific outcome is not really the thing we should live or die on. It's really like doing the work that we want to do.
It's so hard to hold on to that idea. In the comic toolbox, when I was mostly just channeling my own experience as a writer, I was thinking about this idea of words on the page. And typically, I'd be writing along and everything's going great, and I might write something that I really enjoy. I'm like, oh, that's really good. And the minute I did that, I immediately left the page, and I was no longer thinking about the words on the page. I was thinking about how great this was going to be once it was done and published, and I'm on talk shows talking about it.
Yeah.
Now I'm off the page, and I'm not writing at all.
Yeah.
So I would just tell myself, words on the page. Nothing matters but words on the page. Every time you get off the page, try to get back on the page. And by the way, the opposite is true, because I'll be writing along and it sucks. And then I'll say, oh, this sucks. I'm a terrible writer. I'm never going to be successful. Once again, I've taken myself off the page, only now in a profoundly negative sense.
Yeah.
But whether positive or negative, if you distract yourself by thinking about the outcome, you negate the outcome. You never get to the outcome because you're too busy thinking about how the outcome is going to affect you.
Right. No, it makes so much sense, especially when people start putting in like, I got to make a living. You got to make money. I got to, have a savings account or whatever. Like that stuff, it's real life stuff that people deal with. But at the same time, you can't put the same kind of pressure on that. I sort of connected to this thought. There are some people who, they get an agent. The agent says, here's how you move and shake in this business to get ahead. And so they get hyper focused on that. But they're also talented actors, talented comedians. And they do get ahead. They do play the game, so to speak, and get ahead. How do they stay authentic when you're also playing the game of the entertainment business?
Well, when I first came to Hollywood 1,000 years ago, the first thing I did was start teaching a class called Breaking into Hollywood, because I figured who better qualified to teach it than someone who was trying to do it. That's kind of been my modus operandi all along. But one of the notions that I had and taught at the time was Hollywood is like this giant space station. And there's 10,000 ways of docking with the space station. And you just kind of have to find your own way. So I would say authenticity is not necessarily the only path to success. There are people who are quite successful, among other reasons, because they have no self-awareness and therefore no self-doubt at all. They're just steamrollers of pure effort. The person that I'm thinking about is someone who was the boss of my boss when I was working in Romania, and he had come up in the communist system and had been a documentary filmmaker under communism. The guy had no self-awareness at all. He was dangerously unself-aware. And I always felt like frightened around him, physically uncomfortable, because he was just such a force of blank, black nature. no fault of his. He was a product of his environment, but he taught me that as much as I prize self-awareness, there is a path to success that doesn't involve self-awareness at all. You can be an unself-conscious force of nature. And Hollywood is filled with people like that. But for people who do have self-awareness and prize values, positive values, the answer is simple. You must make common cause with people who share your values. They're hard to find, but you must find them. Otherwise, your community will never be in harmony with who you are. You'll be trying to make common cause with assholes, to put it on in vulgar terms. And when I think about my own Hollywood career, I would say that I never really found my community of like-minded people.
Mm-hmm.
But then I wrote the Comic Toolbox, and it started getting me work in other countries. And so I found a path for myself that didn't even involve trying to make common cause with assholes.
Yeah.
And I found a place for myself in the wider world that made much better sense to me and brought me into collaboration and community with people who felt like I felt. So if you have self-awareness and you prize self-awareness, then you want to ask yourself, who is like me and how can I be in company with them? And then just find your way into community with them, online, in person, whatever. Sorry, even as I say that, I'm making it sound simpler than it is, because let's not forget, writers as a class are conflict avoiders. Writers as a class are introverts. We'd much rather be at home, at our desk, writing away than out there talking to people. We don't want to talk to people, build relationships, have schmoozes and meetings and whatnot. So the hustle is a necessary part of success.
Yeah.
Whether the hustle is sending out scripts blind or teaching or joining groups or cold calling agents, it's hard because it puts the ego on the line. One faces rejection, but the alternative is to do nothing. And then all you have is, well, I wrote it and I enjoy it, but nobody else is really a participant in it. So in some sense, it's not a complete experience.
Right.
I'm okay with writers who write for themselves because that's all that matters to them. I'm not okay with writers who write for themselves because they're afraid to expose their work to other people.
Right.
You got to get over that fear.
Yeah. No, that does just kind of stop all of it. Doing the work, getting ahead, doing honest work. It would be an impossibility at some point. You'd just be trying to maybe follow a form. And even then,
I will say, my heart goes out to young practitioners because I think that the world of television and film is much harder for young writers now than it was when I was coming up.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. Well, when I was coming up, I could pick up a phone and call people and talk to people who mattered, which I don't think you can really do anymore. On the other hand, I loved when email came along because I could send queries out and I didn't have to hear no spoken to me on the phone.
Yeah.
But the world we live in now, there's so much downward pressure on the value of creative output. So many people can do it and so many people want to do it. And so many people are willing to take any audience, even if they're not earning money from an audience.
Yeah.
That it's hard, I think, harder to build a professional career as a writer now. With that said, the technology for self-created projects is so much easier. You can shoot a movie on your iPhone, which you certainly couldn't do when I was young.
Right.
So for a certain type of filmmaker, there is more potential now to build a brand without the help of anybody. So
yeah, because it does seem with all of these streaming services and everything, it's like, well, there's so much work out there, but you're right, there's so many more people also trying to vie for that work. And then also there's a lot of hindrance to picking up the phone, like you said.
I was thinking about AI, as we all do. I was thinking about this my great aunt's memoir. I was thinking, in a certain world, the whole project could be an AI spoof. I could have trained AI to write a 100-year-old memoir.
Yeah.
I would never do that, but I can imagine it being done. On the other hand, I have a young protege in Slovenia, like you do, and he's making uh, completely self-built AI short movies. And what he's doing with the tools that are available to him is astounding. He's everybody on a film crew, just like I guess when music editing software, when you could start to make music on your computer, it changed the way people thought about making music and made people realize, I don't need a band, I can be the whole band.
Yeah.
He has made the discovery, I don't need a film crew, I can be the whole film crew. I can write it, produce it, direct it, edit it, light it, distribute it, all using technical tools that are at my disposal. So what we take away from this is tools change. The tools themselves are not good things or bad things. They're just how we use these things.
Mm-hmm.
In the early days of AI, it was described to me this way. AI can be thought of as a competitor, a collaborator, or a tool, and or a threat. And how you build a relationship with it really depends on how you define it.
Mm-hmm.
For myself, I'm never using it as a collaborator because I'm old school, but I am using it as a tool because I'm trying to stay current. And I'm also aware that it's easy to blur the line between tool and collaborator.
Sure. But it's also, if someone's like, this isn't the same kind of writing, but if someone writes an email and they're like, is this clear? AI, is this clear?
Is this clear?
Right. That's a tool. And if someone's changing, I think I heard Ben Affleck talking about using AI as a tool to change the lighting in post-production. Like, that's a tool. That could be a useful tool. I think my concern is, AI slop is bad. I mean, it's slop. And there's so many people who are making a case for AI slop online, and there's something weird going on there because I don't even know if those are bots or real people who are maybe stand to make money. They speak like bots, so I don't assume they're real people. But they're the ones making a case for it. And the thing that's a little concerning, I guess, for me, isn't necessarily that it's AI. It's that it's being used in some people's hands as a threat or an alternative to real people. And it serves the people who watch the dumbest stuff online. They don't watch good stuff. They just watch mind-numbing content. That's what it's really going to, in my opinion, that sort of content online, those like weird videos. I don't know if you've seen them of people saying, I caught my wife cheating at Walmart. It's like stuff like that. That's like such bad stuff. It's mind-numbingly dumb and it's not worth your time to watch. I think AI is going to replace that. I don't think it's going to replace a major motion picture starring Tom Cruise, but maybe I'm wrong.
Well, I mean, when CGI got good in films, the good news is, wow, that dinosaur looks really, really real. The bad news is you're no longer impressed by it because you realize it was made on computer.
Yeah.
So the falsification of film image has already taken place. AI will make it much easier to make spectacular blockbuster movies on lower and lower budgets.
Right.
But also, AI will make it easier for someone with a unique vision to realize their vision and bring it out into the world.
Right.
This whole thing reminds me of the printing press, which was invented in the early 16th century and created a world-changing reality by bringing the Bible into the homes of everybody who wanted it there, so that for the first time since the beginning, you didn't need someone to interpret the Word of God. You could read the Word of God for yourself and decide what it meant. That's the transformation caused by that is still being felt today.
Right.
On the other hand, the printing press also gave rise to pornographic pamphlets
Yeah.
that in the early days of the French Revolution talked about the sexual practices of Marie Antoinette and helped to bring down the monarchy of France. So it's a powerful force that can only be used for good or for evil. And it's kind of up to each of us to decide whether we're going to use it for good or for evil.
Yeah.
You can't ignore it.
Right.
You can't deny it.
Right.
And all you can do is come to terms with it and try to be cool with it.
Innovation's certainly going to come. Like you mentioned CGI didn't go away. But it's really, it's the sinister people out there who are going to misuse it. And that's what we need to really be concerned with and try to combat.
Sorry, I was just going to say, a lot of people are losing their jobs.
Yeah.
Just like the cliche is, well, think about the poor buggy whip manufacturers who got put out of a job when the horse and buggy gave way to the car. Or the one I always think about is sorry, I know some history. In Babylon, their written language was called cuneiform, and it wasn't an alphabet. It was just a bunch of symbols, and you had to be trained in the interpretation of those symbols. And the people who were trained were priests. Babylonian priests were the only one who had command of written language. But meanwhile, the Phoenicians, who were sending ships all around the Mediterranean, said, well, we need to know what's in our cargo so that the other guy on the other end can agree that that's in a cargo. They invented a written language that made their work much more effective, but put all the Babylonian priests right out of business.
Yeah.
Is that a good thing? Is it a bad thing? Is it just evolution?
Right. And that's where it's like, I think in the way the sinister people want to use it, they want to put everybody out of business, out of work. It seems like, but hopefully they won't win. Well, as always, great to talk to you. We're at the end of the episode. It's time to create something together. And there's something you talk about in the Comic Toolbox about jokoids. And it's essentially, your point in that section is when you're writing something, sometimes you need to just have a placeholder for a stronger joke. And so you have like what's called a jokoid, which is something that isn't necessarily funny, but it has the structure of a joke. And then later when you're rewriting, you can put a stronger joke in the moment. And it's a concept that I've heard a lot of singers talk about. Paul McCartney, famously, when he was coming up with Yesterday, he was actually singing Scrambled Eggs just as a placeholder so he could remember the melody. And I want to bring this back to improv a little bit because when I was reading that section, it reminded me of those moments in improv where, oh, this isn't the funny thing. This is like just more setup, or this needs something else to make it work and make it funny. But we don't have in improv, we don't have the luxury of coming back to do another draft. It's happening right now. What sort of advice do you have when people are in that situation? Because I've been in this situation even as a stand-up in open mics where I would tell a joke and I'd be like, wait, this wasn't the funny part. And I'm discovering it now in front of an audience. What advice do you have for helping people in those kind of situations when they've essentially said a jokoid and not a joke, but they're live in front of the audience?
Well, several pieces of advice. Let's see if I can work them out back to front. If the joke doesn't work and you know it doesn't work, own the fact that it didn't work because the audience is aware that it didn't work. And if you don't acknowledge that it didn't work, you create a conflict, a rift in the fabric of space where like they're thinking that joke didn't work, but he's trying to pretend that it did work.
Right.
And I detect his fear and his insecurity, and that makes me want to hold him at arm's length. There's a Robin Williams TV special where he tells an abortion joke that's just too much for the audience. You could hear the whole audience mentally leave the building. And he brought it back in an instant just by saying, oh, well, that didn't work. And the minute he acknowledged that he had told a joke that didn't work, the audience said, okay, he's not trying to sell it past us. So the first thing you can do is, if it doesn't work, don't be afraid to own that it doesn't work, because owning the failure is the thing that will bring the audience back on your side. And this will be true in improv, where the moment isn't working the way you want it to. The minute somebody says, you know what, we're going down a wrong road here, maybe let's reset. Or, however they express it in improv terms, resetting the scene.
Mm-hmm.
The next piece of advice I will offer, and this is true for all creative endeavor, throw it out the window and see if it lands. If you don't give it life, you're never going to know whether it works or not. So if you're not saying it or trying it for fear that it won't work, you're making a judgment in advance over work that hasn't yet had an opportunity to live. Here's the way this manifests in my life.
Mm-hmm.
I'm at a party and I think of a joke and I hear the joke in my head and I start to tell the joke. But before I can tell it, before the words come out of my mouth, a little voice inside my head wakes up. And I call this voice my ferocious editor. And my ferocious editor says, wait a minute, John, don't tell that joke because it might not be funny. And if it's not funny, they might not laugh. And if they don't laugh, they might not like you. And if they don't like you, you can't like yourself. And if you don't like yourself, you must experience full-on ego death and pass away. And so I put my entire ego structure on the platform of a joke I haven't even told yet. It's insane on the face of it. Throw it out the window, see if it lands. Only one of two things will happen. Either it'll land or it won't land. If it lands, great. That's a joke that works. If it doesn't land, that's an opportunity to rethink and retool the joke, figure out what's funny about it, and try to turn it into a joke that does work. Can I challenge you to help me with a jokeoid? Because I have a setup and an imperfect punchline.
Okay.
I'm going to be in Poland in the summer, and I was thinking about if we tell Polish jokes, or we did tell Polish jokes back in the day, do Poles tell American jokes? I was trying to think of one. How many Americans does it take to screw in a light bulb? And the jokeoid is just one, Donald Trump, he screws everybody. But the reason the joke doesn't work is I'm trying to make how many does it take to screw in a light bulb?
And that's he's not like he screws
quite the same as you can't say he screws in everybody because that doesn't work.
Right.
But you can't say he screws everybody because the structure doesn't hold up.
Yeah, everybody and a light bulb are two different things. Yeah.
Different things, right. So
Gosh. Okay. So I chuckled at it because I get what the thing is. I get what it's going for. But you're right. That is the problem to solve, that it's not the same thing. And I'm trying to think of something. And part of the I guess math of the joke is it's still a fix for the problem, I guess. Like if it's like, oh, screwing in a light bulb, you can have this thing that screws in things, like that would be maybe the perfect punchline, is like something else that screws in. But I can't think of something else that you would say you screw in that would also be a joke, like actual funny thing.
Okay, let's deconstruct it. A lot of light bulb jokes, the function of them is to make fun of the other person's perspective. How many producers does it take to change a light bulb? Does it have to be a light bulb?
Right.
That's the joke is the truth and pain of the moment is producers always want to change things and they don't know what they're talking about.
Exactly. And that's why that one works. Yeah.
Right. I'm going to try this one. I don't know if it'll work or not. How many Americans does it take to change a light bulb? Only one. It's Donald Trump. Fuck that guy. I'm going for defeat of expectation.
Right.
But even that doesn't work. A lot of times the light bulb joke is those people are dumb. One person to hold the light bulb and 10 people to turn the ladder because that's an inefficient way of turning the light bulb.
Right.
And ultimately, maybe it's a bridge too far, or maybe we just ask ourselves, what else is the truth and pain of people? How many Americans does it take to change a light bulb? Only one, because they think that's the only light bulb that matters, or something like that. I'm getting at if I'm not an American, I think American cultural imperialism is a problem for me.
Yeah. And also, so what about the changing the setup? Like, what's something, because if you want to keep the punchline, Donald Trump, because he screws everybody.
Yeah.
What would be a setup that leads to that? That's not about like screwing in a light bulb.
How about this one? How many Donald Trumps does it take to change a light bulb? Oh God, there's more than one.
That works.
That works. That works. Why? Because the truth and pain, if you believe, if you're like me, you think Donald Trump is a problem and a burden, and right. So
more than
the idea
one
of
would
there
be
being
bad.
Yeah. So what's revealed in that joke? How many Donald Trumps does it take to change a light bulb? Oh God, you mean there's more than one? How much worse would it be if there were many more Donald Trumps than one?
Right.
That's why that joke works. What we can take away from this, going back to Jokoids, is we started with a joke that didn't work. We knew it didn't work, but we weren't afraid to workshop it.
Right.
It often happens that we'll come up with a joke that doesn't work and we wish it worked. And therefore, we'll stubbornly insist that it does work, even when we know it doesn't work.
Or I've also seen people who will say like, "Oh, it doesn't work," and they'll be afraid, and so they don't even try to work on it. They just drop it altogether.
Which I was just about to do with that light bulb joke.
Well, that is something. One of the things I learned about this concept of putting placeholders in there was Don Henley of the Eagles talking about how he learned to write songs from Glenn Frey, because Glenn Frey would just get words on the paper to get something out. And even if he was like Glenn Frey might be like, yeah, this isn't a good line. We just need something there. So just like get it out. And that taught Don Henley so much because he was like waiting for the good line before he wrote it down. And that, to your point in the book, it just slows down the process.
Exactly. Or kills the process altogether. When we think about scripts, a lot of people get bogged down in early stages of development, story outline, and early drafts because they think the words matter. And they think if they're writing words that aren't good words, they're failing in the process. But I ascribe to something called platform thinking, which says that every level of development is merely a platform upon which we stand to reach the next level of development. Like Don Henley. Okay, this line here is not part of the final work, but it's part of the scaffolding or the platform that will lift me up to the point where I can reach the final work.
Yeah.
And a benefit of that is we often wonder, how do we know when we're done? How done is done? How good enough is good enough? If you get used to telling yourself it's not done yet, and you're really, really hard-nosed with yourself about editing your own work, then when you reach the point where you say, I don't think I can make this better, and I authentically feel like it's as good as I can make it, you tend to trust that feeling more. In other words, to have a yes you can trust, you must be well practiced at saying no. No, that's not the right line. It's not the joke I want. I can do better. And I'm willing to sacrifice that version for the sake of coming up with something better. Then when I come up with something better, I know that I've tested it. At least I've tested it. It's not something I first came up with and now only hope that works, but I don't have any real evidence that it works. This brings us right back to self-awareness. If you have self-awareness and self-acceptance, then you look at your work and you say, this part's working, but this part's not working. Doesn't mean I'm a bad writer or a good writer. It just means I'm a writer in process. So I'm going to hold on to the stuff that I now believe works, and I'm going to work on the stuff that I believe doesn't yet work. And by working on the stuff that doesn't yet work, I will actually improve my ability to know what works, and I will also improve the faith that I have that what I think works actually does work.
There it is. Thanks so much for being on the podcast again, John.
My pleasure.
What a great chat as always. Tons of information, and you can get more on everything John shared at his website. Go to johnvorhaus.com. That's Vorhaus, or you could go to his Amazon author page. You can always find him through the Comic Toolbox as well, and he's always happy to hear from people. He said that before, and he said that to me when we got off air this time, so it's true. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Threads at There It Is Pod, and subscribe to our YouTube channel at There It Is, and follow me on Instagram and Threads at Jason Farr Picks. Also, subscribe to our comedy lifestyle newsletter and support us if you can. We have a Patreon and a PayPal. Go to thereitispod.com for newsletter and support info. Links in bio. Until next time, be good to each other. It's a moral imperative.
The music for the theme song was created by Neil Brooks. The rap was written and performed by Nick Acevedo. The logo for There It Is was created by Jeff Prater. The There It Is podcast is produced by Jason Farr.